Okay, now it's time to jump back into Unity. It's time to use the artwork that we created before and actually create our splash screen. Our splash screen is actually going to be a new scene, and that scene is going to show up when we start our game. When we press start, it will load the scene that we've been working on up until this point, the scene that actually contains your environment and your buildings and your player controller. So to create a new scene, come down into your assets, control click, hover on create, and then go up to scene. Now before I do anything else, I'll see that I have a new scene here and it's already highlighted, ready to be renamed. So I will call this Start Menu, because this is the very first menu that the users, our players, are going to see when they start our game. So let's double click on this scene to open it up. Pretty boring right now, right? So let's go get our artwork. Actually, before I get the artwork, I'm going to create a place to put it. I'll control click, go to create folder, and I will call this menu art. So let's get something in this folder. I've opened it up. So now I'll just take my start button and splash screen PNGs and drag and drop them into my assets. Now before we actually go ahead and use them, I'm going to click on these and change just a couple settings. Like right now the texture type is just set to default. I want to change this to Sprite, 2D, and UI. UI is short for user interface, and that's what our menu is. It's part of the user interface. So I'll just change that one setting and then click apply. I'll do the same thing here to my start button, changing it from texture type default to 2D and UI, and then apply that change as well. Now these are ready to be used in my scene. This scene is almost entirely empty right now, so let's go ahead and create something of our own. We can click on create or control click and then go to UI and canvas. So if we double click on this new canvas that we've made, you'll see we have what just looks kind of like an empty rectangle. But what this represents is a 2D space that can be overlaid on top of our player's camera so that when they come into the game, they'll see whatever is inside of this rectangle. So with our canvas selected, let's go ahead and click Add Component, and what we want to add in here first is just an image. So I'll type in image and select that, and now right here you can see our new image component. But where we have source image, it says none, and then it lets us know that it's looking for a sprite, but it just doesn't have one. So we can go ahead and we can just drag in our splash screen artwork to where it says it needs a sprite. And there it is. Let's see what happens when we test play this scene. Alright, so we're actually playing the game right now, and you can see this is pretty much working as intended. Our artwork is there, filling the whole camera, and this is kind of what our menu looks like right now. Now there's nothing to click on or interact with, but that's where the button comes in. Next on our canvas, we're actually going to control click on the canvas in the hierarchy, and then go down to UI. And this time we're going to click on button. So it gives us a default button. It's not very exciting. That's why we created our own. So right now we have the button selected, and when we look in its inspector, it already has an image. And the source image is this UI sprite right here. But we have our own sprite, so let's just click and drag our own button over here. Now you can see it looks a little bit stretched out right now, so we can simply resize this until our button looks the way we intended it to. You can also see that its default text is on top of our button and not looking very helpful here. So let's take a closer look at our pre-made button by expanding it in the hierarchy. And you can see it has a text component. Now we could just completely delete this out of the hierarchy, or it's really just as easy to come over in the inspector and uncheck the text box so that we're just not seeing it. So if you ever wanted to create a button really quickly inside of Unity, you can just add this button component, change the text to be whatever you want. It doesn't look very pretty, but when you're testing things or creating new features, it's a good way to get started. But we have our own artwork in place on our button right now. So let's just go ahead and make sure that our button is positioned where we want it. It's really up to you, but make it somewhere that's front and center and noticeable to the player. And I just realized as I'm placing my button, I actually brought in the wrong version of my splash screen to begin with. It doesn't have my title text in there. So let me just get the right version in here. There we go. Alright, now everything's looking just about how I want it. Let's go test play this for a second just to see how it feels. Alright, there's my splash screen with the title up top. Here's my button, which already, thanks to Unity's default button settings, when I hover on the button, you can see it changes color a little bit to let me know that I can activate it. And then, when I press it, it dims even further, letting me know that I'm interacting with the button. There's a lot of things you could change about these settings. You could even create an animated start button so that it uses a different image that makes it look like it's being pressed when you click on it. We're not worried about all of that right now, but just know there's a lot that you can do even with something as seemingly simple as a menu. But right now, clicking on this button doesn't actually do anything. So there's still a little more work ahead of us. But let's jump out of here and press save for now. Okay, with our start menu looking pretty good, now it's time to actually make it functional, which means we're going to need to write a little bit of code. Don't worry, I really do mean a little bit of code. It's not much at all. So I'm going to go back to my assets, open up my script folder, and control-click, then hover on Create, and go up to select C# script. I'm going to call this my button. Remember, no spaces. Putting a space in the title of a script is going to break it instantly. If you do put a space in, just go back and edit it and take it out. Now I'll double click on this to open it in MonoDevelop, and there's very little we need to do here, but as always, when working with code, it's important to be precise, so pay close attention. Now we're going to start off by doing something different. For the first time ever in this class, we are going to edit code above this first curly bracket. Before the public class myButton MonoBehavior, we're actually doing something up here. Because we're using a different part of Unity that we haven't really needed to use so far. So I'm going to go up here and click right after the line 3 using Unity Engine. And I'm going to hit enter so that I'm writing something new on line 4. And actually, if you want to cheat a little bit, you could copy this using Unity Engine part here. You don't need the curly bracket, just the words. And I'm going to Command-C to copy, and then I'm going to Command-V to paste. So using Unity Engine, and then we need to add a little something. Dot, so add a period, and then scene with a capital S, and you can see it's already helping me autocomplete it management. So I need scene with a capital S and management with a capital M, all one word. So we're adding this line right here of using Unity Engine.scene management. And then, of course, end it with a semicolon, just like all the other statements up here. Next, we can actually get rid of everything except for our first and last curly bracket right here. We don't need a void, update, or start. What we need is a new public void. So, simply typing public void. Then, let's give a name to the button that we're programming. I'm just going to call this Next Level Button. All one word with every first letter capitalized. Then we're creating a pair of parentheses, and then inside of those parentheses we will be typing string space scene underscore you can do by holding down shift and then pressing the key to the right of 0, and then name. So string scene underscore name. So this is really just setting up our function and giving it a name. Now, to tell this function what to do, I'll hit enter, and I will create a new open and closing curly bracket, and I'll make a little room inside of these brackets to work. So what this function will actually do is when we click on the button, it will go and it will talk to the Unity Scene Manager. So we start by typing out Scene Manager, then we type a dot and tell it to actually load the scene. So load scene, then we need a new set of parentheses to simply put in scene name. So this is saying that the Scene Manager should load the scene, and it should be the same scene name that is defined in our string. If that's a little bit confusing, hopefully the steps that we take next in Unity will clear it up a little bit, because after we attach the code, we're going to play around with it inside of Unity just a little bit. With that done, if everything looks right, make sure that your curly brackets are in the right places and all the code is contained properly. Just go ahead and hit File, Save. And when you jump back to Unity, if you select the My Button script, you should see everything that you typed included in its inspector. And hopefully, no red arrows popping up down below. So now we'll go back to our canvas, or more specifically our button, and we will add this My Button script by clicking and holding and dragging it over into its inspector. When you see a little blue line like this popping up, that means that you'll be inserting your script right inside of it. Now before we can do much with this script, we need to go up to File and then Build Settings. And we need to add to our build settings our open scenes, meaning this menu. Now you can see I have an extra scene in here if you look closely. This is when I was testing this out myself. So I'll just remove mine and keep in our new start menu and my first scene, which is the scene where everything else is going on with my player character and environment. And I don't even need to build this, I just need to make sure that it's here in the build settings. Now it doesn't look like there's many ways to interact with the My Button script right here. And it's true, we don't have any way to interact with this right here. However, we can reference this script using the button script right above it. Let me show you how. This says onClick. So onClick, when we click the button, it should do something. But right now, it doesn't really know what to do. So we are going to take our button, which has our script attached to it, and we're going to drag it over right here. When we release, we should see this little colorful box, and it should say button. With that hooked up, now you can see it still says no function, but this is interactive now. We can click on this and select a function. So you want to go down to wherever you see the name of the script that we just wrote. I named the script My Button. If you did the same, that's where you'll be going. So on My Button, you should see a lot of things that you probably don't understand, to be honest. That's okay. We don't need to know what each one of these does right now. What we're looking for is something familiar. So what's familiar here is this line right here. It says Next Level Button, written exactly the way that we wrote it in our code. So where it says Next Level Button String, we'll click on that. We're almost there. It knows that it needs to load a scene, that it needs to load a level, but it doesn't know which one. We need to tell it the name. We wrote that in our code too, that it would load the scene using its name. All we need to do is in this final slot right here is type in the name of the scene that we want to load. The name of my scene that I've been demonstrating everything else to you in so far, with my house and my environment and my player controller, all of that stuff is in this scene right here called My First Scene with an underscore between each word. So I will simply type that in here, My First Scene, and now if I did everything right, crossing my fingers as we go to test play, let's see if it works. I've got my button, clicking on it now. Scared me for a second, but there it is. We loaded in to my game. So, you've effectively created a menu. There's a lot more that you could do with it. You can give the player more control over settings. You can give them the ability to load specific levels, or simply access other features of your game. There's a lot that you can do with it. So that's just one basic function of the menu, but you can take what you learned there and apply it to a whole host of other possibilities. Once you've got all of this done, go ahead and test play your game so that we're seeing your splash screen, and then take a screenshot of it. Be sure to share it in the comments on Schoology so that we can all see each other's work, and I can give you a grade for everything that you've been doing. Okay, until next time, good luck and have fun.